It's Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer.
We are rolling.
Are we?
Yeah.
Oh God, not again. Don't include that. So, yeah. Hi everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is our holiday
special.
Holiday special. Dun, 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 dun. So, I am Fazz, as always, and this is...
Still rich.
Still rich, like still life. That's... yeah. This isn't going well. So, just a very quick pod this week. Now, it's a holiday podcast for one of us, certainly. I mean, I'm still around, sat on my arse in the UK. But Rich and Fiona, you're off on holiday, aren't you? So
Yeah.
where are you going?
We are going on a train to Europe.
So that's awesome.
And also sat on arse, I suppose.
Yeah, well, yeah, true.
Yeah.
But, you know, travelling.
Well, yeah, stuff will be going past the window.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than the planes.
You know, yeah. I'm sure.
that we normally get going past the window.
Yeah, just pop in with a beer.
Yeah.
Do you want a beer?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, go on, why not? So, I mean, not that I'm following your itinerary or, you know, stalking you guys through Europe, but you've got somewhere specific you guys are going?
We're going to do Paris, Cologne and Brussels.
Great.
And please don't rob my house because I'm not here.
Oh, shit, yeah, that's good. Am I? Wait a minute. This is this is so meta to me in my brain because I'm in your house right now.
Yeah.
But when this is released, not in your house, but
that means I'm not here, and you've just told everybody that my house is empty.
Yep. It's fine. I can look after your house. What's happening? What's happening with your cat? Where's your cat going?
Cattery.
Yeah, I know they're a thing. And
It's like a hotel for cats.
yeah, didn't they enjoy it?
No idea.
No. I don't know. It's a bit weird, isn't it? Because it's almost one of those things where like, you think that they're going away.
I'm weirdly nervous about it because, like, you know, we only got her in December, so it'll be the first time that we've popped her in anywhere like that. So we genuinely don't know how she's going to find it.
Yeah, but I don't know if we discussed in the pub previously or not, but she's like a normal cat. Whereas we have friends that we have friends who listen to the podcast, Hakers, Kyle, who have non-normal, non-conforming cats. I think they're called, possibly. So I imagine, you know, Sunset will take to it quite well.
Maybe. We'll find out.
Yeah, probably. It's so non-committal about this Catteries situation. I'm well invested.
Oh, I don't know. Like, yeah, I'm just... I worry about her. She's very small.
Right, okay, I see. You don't want
she's
to
my princess.
You don't want to talk about it. Oh my God.
Gets me in the feels.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And no, I don't want to talk about it anymore. So we're just going to do a very super speedy, uber quick pod this week, just because we don't want you to forget about us, really. You know, we're having a week off, but that doesn't mean that we're not here. And we're going to release this super speedy, uber quick pod. And it's going to be it's going to be about a super speedy, uber quick game.
Oh, that's nice. That's
Thank
nice.
you. I know, that came out really well. Yeah, nailed it. Right. So, our game franchise. So, Rich, why didn't you tell us which games we're looking at? And...
Ridge Racer! Sorry, I didn't even let you finish your sentence.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think everyone got that right.
I mean, I could do it louder.
Please do.
No, we're doing Ridge Racer. I didn't actually... Like, are you doing Ridge Racer on the PSP? Is it actually called Ridge Racer, or is it like Ridge Racers or something?
I thought it was called Ridge Racer, but then when I've seen reviews, it's called Ridge Racers.
I wonder if it was called something different in America, maybe, or something.
Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't
Maybe.
it? Almost like they had a letter just to be like, well, this is different from the home console, Shazam. So yeah, I'm doing Ridge Racer bracket S bracket.
And I'm doing Ridge Racer. I guess bracket 2011.
Yeah, it needs to be, because they've not varied the name of these games in the franchise very much, have they?
Confusing.
I mean, what was the fourth one called? Ridge Racer V4, or was it
Type 4?
Type 4.
Yeah, Type 4.
And yeah, so at least they went for something different there.
Yeah. And like Ridge Racer 5 was that 5 or was that V?
V.
I don't know. They use a Roman numeral. And it doesn't matter. 5. Ridge Racer 5.
For such a modern looking game, to use a Roman numeral, that's like,
Deliciously baroque.
Yeah. Oh, oh, what just happened there? I don't know. I don't know. My insides shook. So, I've got to stop saying so. My so's, my have turned to so's, and my so's have slowly turned to okays.
So, at this point, I should probably point out that you may remember from the last episode, Fazz mentioned picking up a load of faith from work. We are still ploughing through that. So we're a way in.
Faith, not just some more, faith more
has happened. So bear with, I think.
I'm having a great time. How do we get into this pod? Right. You go. You start. You lead us.
Ridge Racer.
I'll follow.
A storied franchise, I guess. It's been going since PS1, involving sleek cars, belting around tracks. Got a bit of a reputation for having a sort of style of its own. It's not quite as sort of in-your-face Ministry of Sound as Wipeout would have been, or something like that, for those of you who listened. But nonetheless, goes for like a kind of a sleek Japanese kind of vibe. To the extent, in fact, Ridge Racer Type 4, I'm pretty sure a fair chunk of that intro focuses on her hi-fi in the intro sequence, and it's all very like, hey, consumer electronics are sleek and so are these cars. So like it's got a vibe all of its own, but the franchise has fallen on hard times, I think, in recent years is fair to say.
Just disappeared
Off the face of the earth. Incidentally, and I know I'm always plugging them, but Digital Foundry did a really good like retrospective of the entire series, so would recommend that on YouTube. If you're that way inclined.
I should always listen to your recommendations and never do. So
That's
I need
fine.
to. No, but it's not fine because I every time you say, "Oh, they've done a good timeline," or they've done a good, digital history and things, sounds great. And then on the walk home, I kind of forget what's going on. So can you just WhatsApp me to do it, please?
Nudge you.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So, and I guess they are were they just because it was Japanese? Were they a Sony-based thing? I know they did kind of get across to Xbox early, sort of noughties.
Yeah. So like later on in the franchise, they made the jump. So let me remember my research. That it's Namco for the most part. So very arcadey. However, as they got later on in the franchise, so like, I don't know, Ridge Racer 6 onwards or something like that, they start to use other developers as well. So I think there was one particularly late game that was the same developer as Flat Out and was it Wreckfest? No, like another of the kind of Demolition Derby.
Breakfast? Did you say breakfast?
Wreckfest.
Okay. Damn.
But like one of the Demolition Derby type developers got their mitts on it. The one that I'm reviewing,
one of my favourite games,
was actually a sort of joint partnership between Namco and Sony. They formed this other developer that only released one game, and it was this one.
That sounds promising.
It sounds promising. But Ridge Racer games like traditionally were kind of launch titles for a lot of PlayStation and like Sony consoles.
Which is interesting because I just said interesting twice in about the space of 2 seconds, but it is interesting for the third time because Wipeout, we talked about that being sort of a launch title sort of thing, and it's really weird that they're kind of in the same ballpark, that Japanese cool feel racing game, but developed in different places. So Namco being a very multinational sort of company, whereas like Studio Liverpool being a very UK sort of based situation with the Wipeout situation.
Yeah, I think at the time like Namco were quite Japanese, and certainly like if you are keeping an eye out and like a lot of the Ridge Racer circuits, feel like the scenery you're going past is, not necessarily Western. The highways, have tall walls like you might catch on more like Japanese highways and things like that. So, yeah, they definitely have very different feels. I think Ridge Racer was always seen as the more sort of grounded alternative, literally and figuratively, I guess, despite being an arcade racer.
Yeah, cool. Would you like me to just plough into a little bit of a review?
Wade in, yeah.
So, I went for Ridge Racer on the PSP, unsurprisingly, being the person with the PSP. But there was also Ridge Racer 2 on the PSP as well, which I've not played ever, if we're going to be honest. But in a nice way, this game was I think this was the first game that I owned on the PSP. I think I've said that a few times about different games, but I think I picked up like 3 or 4 in the same sort of week, if you will. But it was certainly one of the first games. And the very first thing you come across on Ridge Racer on the PSP is the loading screen. The loading screen is an old... I don't even know what game it is. I can't remember now.
New Rally X? Is it that top-down one that almost looks like Pac-Man but with an RC car?
Yes.
New Rally X.
Thank you.
I cheated to get that answer, by the way.
It doesn't matter. We pod well. I just kind of set you up for the actual...
you make me sound really clever. Did that come out the way I intended it?
No. No, it came out well. It came out well for you. So, yeah, 2005. It just seems to be my vibe of game. And yeah, this game, in terms of notes, I didn't write many. I played it for about an hour. There's not a lot of depth to it, but it doesn't need to be either. It's just such a cool game. Like I said this about Wipeout, but it's the same thing. I know they kind of tread on their toes each other, but so cool, so arcade racery, as we've talked about previously. The sunset vistas, the nondescript electronic music that you're just driving around, drifting around to. I will say this for this particular entry, which is good for the PSP, because usually, as I sort of lamented in the last few pods, that actually doesn't add normally when you get a PSP. Ridge Racer decided they were going to add drifting in at this point. It was almost like they developed the game a bit further and they decided this is the one they were going to drop it into, and it stuck from there, and actually it became a better game for it. Probably even more arcadey, that is, in you could get away with a few more things in and out of corners when you were playing this game, compared to Ridge Racer 5, which is the previous iteration on the PS2, which is games kind of based on its support from it. And you get nitrous for the first time as well. It's almost like they just kind of were like, kind of watched Fast and Furious 2 last night, might just,
Everything went through that phase then, didn't it? Like stick nitro and everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know we're not reviewing it right now, but Need for Speed Underground 1 or 2, both of them possibly even. Like the racing where you're in a lane.
Oh, the drag racing.
Thank you very much. Definitely didn't make you sound too clever there either.
Need for Speed Underground 2 definitely had it.
And the drag racing and having the nitrous on that's just hella fun. Oh. And this was the same, the game was improved almost by having, and you got 3 nitro boosts that you fill up as you go around the track, and the more you drift, the more you fill up your nitro boosts, so it's almost rewarding you to play in a bit of a risque way, get around those corners quickly. And the neon, there's so much neon all over the hood. Like, there's just, everythit is neon. And it's like, it makes me feel like, I don't know why, because like, I know the idea is that in these games, it's almost like it kind of hypes you up like a drug. Whereas sunset vistas and neon and all the electronic music actually chills me out a little bit. I feel like I'm listening to Robert Miles, Children, on an Ibethan sort of beach while I'm playing this game. Like as in with a sort of like really hard vodka in my hand that I'd never drink, but I would in this situation. Just it's a feel. It's a feel, Ridge Racer, and this particular Ridge Racer is a feel. And having it in your pocket, and I actually did go outside and play this in the garden. I actually used my PSP portably. I know, and I was sat there, and it was great, and I really enjoyed myself. And you've already referred to the walled-in situation. That's probably a bit of a drag on this game. It's very... Like Burnout Legends, which we'll come to at some point because I'll review that game because it's amazing. But like Burnout, you kind of you can bounce off the walls and it'll correct you a bit. It obviously does hamper your progress in terms of winning the race, but in terms of you never spin out, you never crash your car. Like, you just bounce off walls and you correct yourself. And like you said rightly, that might be how it is in Japan in terms of real life. There might be a bit more walled in motorways, etc. But in terms of how you're driving on this, it does feel a bit like you can't really go wrong necessarily. You can go as quick as you possibly can into a corner, and it'll kind of correct you. You could probably just hold X the entire time during this game, and you would probably end up at the finish line, probably like, you know, third or fourth in a race. Never turn a corner and use your nitros. But the idea is that you're meant to be led down that drifting path.
Yeah.
Like I said, again, another thing that is probably a bit of a negative is just the basic game's very samey. That is so this is why you can kind of get a feel for it after about an hour. Tracks are kind of the same, cars are kind of the same. There's no real modifications around those cars particularly, and you don't really get them necessarily in the home console of Ridge Racer 5 either, but you do a little bit more probably than the PSP. It's just like you pick up a car and go, and you do a Grand Prix, and you try and win the Grand Prix, and then you get another Grand Prix, you finish the game. And it's like, there's not much to it, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. But, you know, it was fun while it lasted, and I could have made it last another couple of hours, try and get some more track records and, you know, set more challenges for myself. But I'm not that kind of person. You know, I was like, oh, I've done the game. You know, I've done it in like 3 hours, and I didn't need any more than that. If I was paying full price for this game at the time, which I did, then I would have been disappointed with how much there was there. But almost with a bit of a retrospective gleam in my eye, you kind of look back and go, this is a good game for a couple of hours, and you can go back to it and play it again and just get a good feel for what you want from that game. So yeah, it's a good looking game. You know, it's a really good looking game. Yeah. The cars maybe aren't as good looking on the PSP port, but the blur of frame rate around you is perfect. You just don't get any rip. You don't get any at all. 2005 on a PS2 game, effectively, and it looks great. It's just ridiculous. And I don't know how they do it, because they do that in most Ridge Racer games. They just make it look good around you. So if they could have made the car look a little bit better as well, that'd been even better. So, yeah, I'm going to land on a solid 7 for this game. You know, there's not a lot to it, but what there is fucking fun. So yeah, there we go.
Excellent. So, full disclosure, for part of this odyssey, I actually picked up the PSP Ridge Racer myself, and mucked about with it. And
yay! A dual review.
Yeah, and like
I'm giddy with excitement. Tell me more.
I agree with you for the most part.
Knocking the mic over.
But what struck me, because I played a bit of Ridge Racer 5 as well, in the name of research.
I tried to. My copy is dead.
Oh, it's worth tracking down. It's really good. Yeah, like I think you're right. I think the vibe carries it a long way. Like, it's got that almost Zen-like vibe when the drifting comes together. And you know, you're weaving between two people going around a hairpin corner, and then you're nitroing away and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, like the visuals are phenomenal. Like, you're absolutely right, especially for the PSP. But what struck me, like, I think more than you felt, I felt a bit more of a difference between the cars. Like, there was a little bit more variation there. And there was a bit more, there was a decent variation in tracks. And there is a reason I'm covering all this, right? But what struck me was the version I played, and again, I'm kind of caveating that because I played this on my PlayStation TV on an American account, so I don't know if it would be a significantly different version or not. But there was a little button on there that was basically like create a tour. So you could set an amount of time that you wanted to fill, and then it would create a little Grand Prix for you based on various tracks. So if you wanted like a 10-minute session,
I looked around, I didn't see anything like that on the PSP. But
so the point is that all of those things were in a game circa, 2005?
Yeah.
Ridge Racer 2011 has none of that. And like, one of the things that struck me about the PSP Ridge Racer and Ridge Racer 5, they feel good to control. Like, it's probably the only racing game I've ever played where I felt the need to switch to the D-pad because I was having to like counter steer quite a lot to, you know, drift and all that. But the cars have a bit of weight. You know, when you get them around a corner, it feels good. Like, sure, it might correct a little bit, but you know, you've done some legwork. Hills as well. The cars will slow down on a hill, right? Ridge Racer 2011 on the Vita, the cars are just constantly accelerating. Like, they feel light. They feel like they're on autopilot sometimes. Like, you could, you know, press a direction, drift around a corner, and then, like, I got to the extent that I wasn't, like, counter-steering at all. I wasn't correcting. It corrects itself, like, very much so. Like, no need for bouncing off walls or anything like that. Like you're saying, it just does it. Like, it's on fucking autopilot, it feels like. And not only that, but there doesn't feel like there's much variation between the cars. And you've got this upgrade system where you have to use credits to like buy upgrades and put them into the car. So it almost feels like the cars are skins, and any of the kind of meaningful upgrades are done in the tuning section or through this obscure upgrade tree that doesn't always have an upgrade in it. So you're having to shell out, say, 400 credits at a time to get the next bit of this upgrade tree, and there's no guarantee there'll be anything on it. It might just be a tip. It might explicitly say there is nothing in this section. And so you have to spend those credits to get to the next bit. Not only that...
How can an in-game credit system
be so fundamentally fucking broken?
Oh my god, that has made me so angry.
Yeah. It gets better. So, like, the whole thing is clearly geared towards playing online, right? You choose one of 4 teams. They give you an objective, like beating this other team or what have you. And then you're just thrown at it. There's no Grand Prix. There's no tournaments. There's no leagues. There's nothing like that. You can do ghost races, and you can like download other people's ghosts from the internet and stuff like that, or you can use the ones that are baked into the game. You can do single races against AI opponents, or you can do time trials, or you're into the multiplayer. Now, the multiplayer I can't speak to. I don't have PlayStation Plus at the moment. As far as I'm aware, it's pretty dead. But for the single player components, like, that's it. Now, if there was a PSP style, you've got 10 minutes, let's put a Grand Prix together at a push of a button kind of thing, I think it would go a long way to helping. Like, window dressing matters in a racing game.
Yeah.
You know, like we've said a couple of times about things like some of the Star Wars games, like, ultimately what you're doing is quite repetitive. So, like, the stuff around it, you know, counts for a lot. And there's none of that here. Like, the game economy is so broken that, like, you basically get into a race and you get basically 100 or so credits for finishing. And that's not, it doesn't matter where you place, like, it's for finishing.
Yeah.
So if it's 400 a pop for any upgrade, you're constantly having to at least do 4 races before the next upgrade. You get arbitrary speed increases. So, like, rather than having separate cars at separate classes like you would have done previously, it's all arbitrary on the, so you can keep the same car through the whole game and just tinker with it, and then suddenly every however many races it'll suddenly be able to do like another, I don't know, 30 mile an hour or something like that on its top speed. And it's baffling, some of these design choices.
Yeah.
And like, there's, when it originally shipped, I think there were maybe like 5 cars and 3 tracks, which even for Ridge Racer is not many. And like, sure, you had reverse ones, but still.
I was just reading about this. Like,
Yeah.
I read that. So when it first shipped, it was 3 tracks, 7 cars, because it expected you to buy DLC.
So I think if you bought it new at
Which
retail,
sure was your favourite. You love buying more game.
I do. I can't get enough of it.
That's what I heard of the podcast. I've heard that you really love DLC.
So I think if you bought it new at retail, you got a voucher that would give you some of the DLC, right?
Just give you the fucking game.
But this is the thing, right? This was,
I just tried to tear my hair out. I don't have any.
but this was the bad old days where, like, they knew that people were buying things pre-owned, but didn't know what to do about it. And so this was, you had it quite a lot on like Xbox 360 games where you'd have the pass, like the season pass, air quotes, like in the game box if you bought it new, but it wouldn't work, you know, if you bought it pre-owned. It's exactly the same model here. plus this whole online, like, not quite microtransactions, but certainly leaning that way. And so I bought the DLC to see if it made much of a difference, and did it fuck? Like,
Oh, really?
like,
Shit.
So you have more tracks, but ultimately, because of the way that the car setup works, you're just changing the look of the car ultimately. So it's not great. Not only that, you know those teams that I said about joining at the start of the game? If you want to change that, you have to pay like 30,000 credits or something like that, which is about however many thousands of races. Like, it's ridiculous, right? The way that the game economy in itself and the unlocks and progression works is so fundamentally broken, it's breathtaking. When you're on
They should be working in DIN dollars.
Well, they should.
Yeah.
They may as well be.
Yeah, I know. There's a heart back to episode 1 for you all. Was it episode 1? 2?
It might have been. There or thereabouts.
We've done
Early
so
days.
many episodes
Lots
right
of
now.
talking.
It's almost into double figures.
So, yeah, it's... So Ridge Racer 5, the PSP one, the bits that I've played, like, they've kind of got this sort of sleek, like, characterful thing going on. Like, you know, you have old Namco games on the liveries on the cars and stuff like that. Or, you know, mini games at the start, and, you know, Type 4 as well has, you know, brilliantly overworked dialogue, and, you know, there's some charm there, there's some character. This game has none of that.
It's so weird.
It's
why is
so
it
stripped
so...
to the bone. Stripped to the bone. And, like, on the track, when it has its moments, yeah, it feels good, but compared to 5 or the PSP one, nah, not even close.
So odd.
So odd. And so, like, when I started playing it, it's like, yeah, you can get some enjoyment out of it. You can, but it just feels like it's stuck in the mud. Like, it's baffling. And there are some nice ideas for, like, the online components. Like, if you get a trophy or something like that, occasionally you can, like, add your comment to it and it'll pop it on a board for other people to see and things like that. So, you know, hey, if you're playing 2011 Ridge Racer and you see something from Compos Zappers just saying, nice, that was me. And, you know, like...
Check it out.
Don't. But it's... For every, like, nice idea, there's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 that are just baffling. Utterly baffling. So, like, when I started this, you know, I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm being harsh. Like, what's another good arcade racer from back when? And I dug out the Saturn, went on Sega Rally, and was like, well, that's 2 cars and 3 tracks. But that was 1995. So, like, you know, surely in the 16 years after that, we'd have got somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I started this, I thought maybe I'll give it a 4. But the more I've talked, the more no, it's 2. Just it's a 2. Like, the moment to moment when you're on the track, you can get some enjoyment, but there is so much to overlook. Yeah. And the PSP version of Ridge Racer is right there on the store. Do yourself a favour, go and get that instead. Don't bother with the Vita one.
Gosh, the first real negative review I'd say from yourself.
Probably,
yeah. I like that. That's got a lot of spunk.
Yeah, well, I was having that moment of, like, did I enjoy it less than Call of Duty? You know, like you were saying earlier, about The Sims and stuff like that, you know, and that's how you benchmark. It's like, oh, actually, yeah, I think it was weirdly less, like...
You had fun with the weird quirks of Call of Duty, and everyone appreciated hearing that. So, whereas you just sound plain angry right now.
I'm not even angry, I'm disappointed, man. Like, the Ridge Racer games that I've played have been good fun. You know, Ridge Racer Type 4, you can get that on the Vita store, and it is an infinitely better game than this.
And that's like almost like, I'm not saying it's all it has, but that's what it has going for it, is the fun, the zen.
Yeah, it feels great when it all comes together.
So to not have that within the game, it feels like such a sidestep. You know, that is, why could they not just make the same game but for the next gen console to make people feel good about themselves? Even if people are like, well, it's not that progressive, but it's still fun. Yeah, it sounds like it's just.
This just seems to fundamentally misunderstand, like, what made Ridge Racer great, and it comes close, but ultimately it's a shadow of its, like, best.
Yeah,
it really is. Yeah,
they probably had a bad employee working on it. Gerald.
Jimmy from accounts.
Yeah, Jimmy, you know, came across, worked on it with Namco.
Yeah.
Bastard. So we the reason this pod was kind of inspired when it was that Rich came across an article by a chap called Adam Ishmael. It was on jalapnik.com, and as recently as March this year, which
I'd not come across it until this article.
which is really interesting because considering that, like you said, the franchise has been dormant, hopefully not dead, but dormant for maybe he's even used the word dormant. I stole it. I didn't read it. For about 10 years now. He ranked the Ridge Racer franchise, and I guess we're not going to go through that because most people wouldn't be interested in going into that much detail and things. But it's interesting to see where the games that we have just reviewed ourselves actually rank and what comes out top in not just handheld but overall. And I think it probably sits with what we've already said anyway. So out of the 12 games, at number 11 is Ridge Racer PS Vita. So it's the second worst Ridge Racer game according to this chap.
I can believe that.
And to be honest, like when I've read through the article, it is very, very well wrote, and it sounds like he's got a lot of experience in the game, so I can totally trust that. And like you say, it already sits with where you were. When I look at where the PSP version that comes in at I'm still scrolling. Number 4 out of 12. So which sounds very similar to what we're both saying really about it, I'd say.
I think so. And like I was saying, I was playing that on the PlayStation TV, and having it all nice blown up and playing it on a nice comfy DualShock 4 controller and stuff like that. It still looks fantastic.
What would you give it?
Out of 10? You know what? I would probably give it an 8.
An 8.
I would go higher than you.
One lower than Wipeout, but one higher than what I think it is.
Yeah, I think so. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And then we're just looking at the top 3 in this list. So Rage Racer. I've never played a Rage Racer. PS1? I've never heard of it, to be honest. I mean, this could be a US list, and we think it is.
PC, maybe?
It says a PS1 gameplay. Right. I mean, it looks great. Looks really good. And then the top 2 then, games that we have played. So R4, Ridge Racer Type 4, in at number 2.
Yep.
One of the best PS1 races.
Very highly regarded, generally.
I had a lot of fun with it when I had it.
Yeah. Like
I literally have not played it since I had it, but I remember it fondly.
I also have that on my PlayStation TV, actually.
You have a lot of things that I want to play.
And yeah, like it holds up. Like it's not as good as the one that you've just scrolled to.
It's interesting though, because I think that when I read around this subject a little bit, that that people kind of vary between the two games.
Yeah, I think so. Like there was definitely a golden era for it, and like I can totally see why people would enjoy 4. I think that was one of the ones, kind of like we were saying about Wipeout, and just being able to demonstrate what a PlayStation could do.
Yeah.
I think Type 4 was one of the ones that really did that, but also had that like chill zen vibe.
Yeah.
With it.
So in at number 1 then, Ridge Racer 5.
I would
Ridge
back
Racer
that
B.
up. I would back that up. Like I've had really good fun when I've mucked about with that.
I think I probably disrespected this game when I first had it. I think, just like the PSP version, this was... I think this might even have been my first PS2 game.
Really?
Yeah, it was there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And I probably didn't think a lot to it. And I don't know why at the time. Like, but then I think that... not even think, I know that I would feel completely differently about that now. Like, as in, I feel like after speaking to you and looking at videos of it and trying to play it on my own PS2, and then my memories kind of coming back about it, and I think I gave it a hard time at the time because I was like, it felt very basic because it was almost like a time trial sort of thing, and then I look at the PSP version and it's like, well, that had the drifting and nitrous, whereas this didn't necessarily have it. But it's a beautiful game for for a PS2 game. Like, it looks like you look at it graphically, like it's not a pixelated game at all. Everything's smooth, round off. Like it's a very sleek racing game.
Yeah, so like that still they've got on there. I wonder if they were using an emulator for that, because the copy I've got downstairs, running it through the telly, is a bit more jagged than that. It's not quite as streamlined as that picture looks. It does have the drifting though interestingly.
Did it?
Yeah. Ridge Racer Type 4 did as well.
Maybe I was shit at it.
I wonder if it goes right the way back. But it didn't have the nitro.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't as good at it. I don't remember trying to drift on that game, though. I remember feeling like, this is probably where the disrespect comes for it. I remember struggling around corners, and maybe that's why I wasn't very good at it.
That's why, yeah, because I could imagine that you might have been trying to play it like Gran Turismo and like slowing down for corners and stuff like that rather than getting sideways. Because when I was mucking about with it at the weekend, and like I quite like how it didn't have that. Safety net's a harsh way of putting it, but it didn't have the nitro for like getting you out of a tight spot.
Yeah.
So like you had to be good at the drifting, but you also had to like, I mean, it sounds stupid, but like steep hills and stuff like that suddenly became this like tactical game of like, okay, well, how much can I push going into it, knowing that I'm going to need the speed to get up it to try and get around that guy. And like if you have nitro, that kind of it takes it away a little bit. And if you're playing Ridge Racer 2011, then hills don't apparently matter. But Ridge Racer 5,
floating around.
But it has that weight, and it has you know, a really satisfying approach to arcade racing. And you know, to go back to what we were saying in the Wipeout episode about like what makes an arcade racer, like this now for me is a really good example of an arcade racer alongside the likes of Sega Rally and stuff like that. Because of the amount that you are relying on getting sideways to, you know, get around a corner quickly and succeed.
I mean, I definitely put it almost in, like, this is the home console version of Daytona Ridge Racer. You know what I mean? Like, as in,
That's an interesting comparison, because the car from Daytona is DLC for Ridge Racer 2011.
Oh, really?
Or at least the skin of it. Who the fuck knows if it makes a difference?
Who
Probably
knows
not.
how many credits you paid for that? But, you know, all real monies. Cool. So that was a nice little holiday pod, you know, coming in at the swift however many minutes. And, you know, we absolutely love being with you guys. And that's why I wanted to put one out this week as well, just because we didn't want to, you know, not give you some content. So, you know, Rich is going to go and
Be somewhere else.
Jolly around, and I'll dwell here. You know, might even just go to a Cattery, say hello sunset. You know, just keep it going. Really, do you know what I mean? Just get freaked out by me every single week. Why not add another week to it? So, which of the 3 cities that you're going to are you most looking forward to?
Cologne.
Excellent, cool. Why?
Because I've not been.
Yeah,
and I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, I've never been to Brussels. I've been to Paris and Cologne. Cologne's nice. Yeah, it's cool.
Nice.
So, right. Well, you enjoy yourself on holiday.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for listening to the pod. And we'll speak to you again soon.
Cheers.
Guys.